I'm sick of these new niggas out. I'm that new nigga.
I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 niggas wanna war, 10 niggas on the floor, 11 niggas on the porch, 12 killers wanna war, 13.
What is up, guys, and welcome to the video. Today we are going to be learning After Effects basics. I know I typically post tutorials that are a little more advanced, but I know there's a lot of you out there who are simply looking to get started with After Effects, and if that's you, you're in the right place. Today we're going to cover the general user interface of the software, how to import files, create compositions, how to work your layers, some basic animation, basic time remapping, basic masking, and the most important keyboard shortcuts you'll need to know to be able to work fast within After Effects. I actually edit faster within After Effects than Premiere Pro because I know these shortcuts. If you can become proficient with them, you will be editing really fast within After Effects in no time. As soon as you get into the software, you will get this home screen. It will show your recent projects that you can open by clicking down here. You can select Open Project to go to File Explorer and find a project that's not showing down here, or you can select New Project to create a new project. So we're going to do that. Now, this is your default workspace in After Effects. If you go to Window, Workspace, you can see that there are all these options for different workspaces you can work with your project in. I wouldn't worry about messing around with workspaces because the default workspace has everything you need. Over here on the left, you have your project files. Right now it's empty. Then you have your effect controls. Whenever you add an effect to a layer, all the parameters to adjust that effect will appear here in effect controls. Here is your composition window. This shows the video preview for your file. Down here is your timeline. This is where all your layers will show up. And over here on the right is your effects and presets tab, along with some other helpful tools, but the effects and presets tab is the most important here. Now, if you want to import a file, you go to File, Import File, navigate to wherever the file you want to import is. If Create Composition is selected, it will automatically create a composition out of this shot. If you're familiar with Premiere Pro, think of a composition like a sequence. I'm going to uncheck that, so we simply import the file. Now our file shows up in the project folder. Alternatively, you can simply drag and drop files into the project folder. Now we need to create a composition in order to start working with these files. So select New Composition here. That will give you the option to create your composition. You can select the aspect ratio and the frame rate and the duration of the composition. Also have the option to create a new composition by pressing this button here. So create a new composition. I'm going to name it Main Composition. I'm going to leave a 4K aspect ratio and then switch my frame rate to drop 24. And then make the duration 30 seconds. Now we have a timeline. This blue bar up here shows your workspace. You can lengthen it and shorten it by dragging the edges. Alternatively, you can change your workspace by moving your playhead and pressing B on the keyboard to have the beginning snap to your playhead, and then pressing N to have the end snap to it. That is the area through which your video preview will play through. If we add a file here, let's add this first drone shot to the beginning. You can create these layers in your composition by simply dragging and dropping your files down into it, and you can slide them around like this to adjust where they are in your timeline, or you can automatically have your layer snap to wherever your playhead is by pressing the left bracket button. It will snap the beginning of your clip to that spot, or pressing the right bracket button will snap the end of your clip to that spot. I'm gonna go to 0 seconds and snap the beginning of my clip to that spot by pressing the left bracket button. Then I'm going to drag this second clip so it starts at the end of this first clip. If you drag it and hold shift, the clip will snap to points of interest, like the playhead or the end of the last clip. Now, if we play back the video preview by pressing the spacebar, it will only play back the area between these blue bars. Again, that is your work area. So let's actually extend that to be at the beginning of our clip. Go to 0 seconds, press B, and then let's extend it to be at the end of our second clip by navigating your playhead to the end of your second clip and then press N. All this black space at the end of our composition is just empty space, and we don't have any clips to fill that area. So if you right click your blue work area and then select Trim Comp to Work Area, it will shorten your composition to the length of your blue work area. If you would like to create an adjustment layer, simply right click the empty space in your timeline, select New, and then Adjustment Layer. You can adjust the length of this to whatever you would like, just as you can do that with your regular clips. And let's say I only want it to affect the first clip. So I'm going to hold down shift and drag it to the end of that clip so it snaps. And then let's add a Lumetri color effect to that adjustment layer and manipulate it a little bit. Let's up the contrast a bit and up the saturation. This adjustment layer will affect every layer beneath it. In this case, that is this one drone shot. Let's say we want to clean up this timeline a bit and make this drone shot and this adjustment layer into one layer. You can simply select both of them by holding down shift and clicking, right click them, and then select Precompose. Name this whatever you want. We're just going to name it Precomposition for simplicity, and that combines them into one layer. You can always go in and edit that precomposition by double clicking it and then make any adjustments you would would like within that precomposition. If you're familiar with Premiere Pro, precomposing is essentially the same thing as nesting. You can drag and drop the ends of these clips in order to shorten them or lengthen them. And you can see in this grayed out area that there is more data within this clip that you can use. It's just not being shown in the timeline because we have shortened our clip length. Alternatively, you can press Alt right bracket to move the visible end of your clip to your playhead, and you can use Alt left bracket to move the visible beginning of your clip to the playhead. We're going to extend these out to the ends so that it shows the full clip though. So if we look through this clip, you can see I'm simply just setting up the shot for the first half of the clip. So we're going to figure out where we actually want this clip to start. And I start the shot right there. Press Alt left bracket to move the beginning of the visible portion of your clip to the playhead. And by the way, guys, if there's a green bar over your footage, that means it will play back smooth because the software has already rendered it out. Any darker gray area like this means it hasn't been rendered out yet. If you would like to see a higher quality preview, you can switch the quality here by going to full, but I typically stick with quarter so I can edit faster. Let's say I want the clip to end here. So I'm going to leave my playhead there, press Alt right bracket, and that will move the end of my clip to my playhead. Now I'm going to clean this up a bit, navigate to 0 seconds again, press left bracket to move the beginning of my clip to the playhead, then navigate to the end of this clip, select my second layer, and drag our second layer back to meet the end of the first clip. Now again, we have all this black space in the timeline, so I'm going to navigate to the end of our second layer, press N to move the end of our workspace to the playhead, right click the blue work area, select trim comp to work area. Now, what can we do to manipulate these layers? You can duplicate the layers if you would like by selecting your layer and pressing Ctrl D. You can split your layer into 2 layers by moving your playhead to where you would like to split it and then pressing Ctrl Shift D. Another useful keyboard shortcut for moving around in your timeline is holding down Ctrl left arrow to move back 1 frame or pressing Ctrl right arrow to move forward 1 frame. With our layers, we can adjust the position by pressing P. Select your layer, press P to open up your position parameter, press S to open up your scale parameter, press R to open up your rotation parameter, and press T to open up your opacity parameter. Think of T as transparency. These are the keyboard shortcuts that make my editing process faster within After Effects than Premiere, so I highly suggest getting used to knowing your P, S, R, and T. Now, every single one of these parameters has this blank stopwatch next to them. Let's say we want to animate these parameters. We want this to fade in from black. Simply click the stopwatch next to your opacity. It will create a keyframe wherever your playhead is. Let's start it at 0% opacity and then move forward a few frames and switch it to 100% opacity. Now that will animate that value so it fades in from black in this case. And you can do that with any of your keyframes. Let's say we also want the clip to scale out throughout the entire shot to create a dolly zoom effect. Press S to make sure your scale parameter is open. Press the stopwatch at the beginning of your clip. I'm going to zoom it in. We can't see this because we made it black at the beginning, but I'm going to zoom in 200% and then move my playhead to the end of the clip and scale out to 100%. Now the clip is scaling out throughout the entire duration and creating this dolly zoom effect. If you want to zoom in and out of your clip right in the preview window, simply use your mouse scroll wheel. Another thing you can do right in the preview window is adjust your position by simply clicking and dragging your clip. If you open up your position parameter in your layer, you will see that the value changes as you move the clip around. So let's actually reframe this a bit. I'm going to go to the beginning of the clip, set a position keyframe, and reframe it. Move to the end of the clip and reframe it once again. And we are at 100% scale here, so we need to just reframe it back to the default settings of 1920 1080 for it to fully fill the screen. So now our dolly zoom effect looks like this. It's just a little trippy effect where the foreground is moving at a different speed than the background. Now, let's say we wanted to see all of our keyframes at once. Simply select your layer, press U, and it will open up all your active keyframes. Another common feature you're likely to use within After Effects is time remapping. So let's say we want this clip to speed up or slow down. You can simply right-click it, time stretch, and if you want it to be 2 times speed, the stretch factor would be 50. So now if you play it back, the clip is playing at 2 times speed because we stretched it to half the length. Let's say we wanted it to be half speed. Since the standard stretch factor is 100, you would have to stretch it to 200 to make it half speed. But this is going to make your clip choppy if you did not shoot at a high frame rate. I shot this at 30 frames per second, so the clip ends up being choppy. I'm going to time stretch it back to standard 100. Another way you can manipulate the time remapping is by selecting time, enable time remapping. It will automatically create a keyframe at the beginning and end of your clip. It goes based off the actual data from your clip, so here is where the clip actually ended. And then where it actually began is way back in the timeline, so we're not going to see that first keyframe. So what I suggest is adding a keyframe at the beginning and ending of where you actually cut your clip. Now we can simply adjust time in that way. So if we drag these closer together, the clip will move faster. If we drag them further apart, the clip will move slower. And again, be careful with your frame rates. If you drag it out too far and you don't have enough frames, the video will start to get choppy. But if you're just speeding up the clip, you won't have that issue. If you drag these two values really close, now the entire thing will play between those two keyframes. Couple other things you can do under the time drop down are time reverse layer that just plays your clip in reverse, and when it has this blue dashed line, that just means your clip is reversed. This tends to make the rendering process really slow. For whatever reason, After Effects just hates playing things in reverse, so I try to minimize that as much as possible. And you can create a freeze frame of the clip, which will simply freeze the frame of wherever your playhead was at when you selected the freeze frame effect. Another useful feature within After Effects is the masking tool. Let's go to our second layer and drag it up so it's above our first layer. Just for good measure, whenever a layer is above another layer, it will appear first. If you change the opacity of this layer, it will start to show the layer beneath it. But what we're going to do is create a little masking transition. Press G, you'll open up your pen tool, you can create a mask. Let's actually just make the mask the entire clip so the entire thing is visible. Now this clip has a mask showing the entire thing, so it's really not creating much of an effect. But if we were to drag this in, you would see that it starts cutting off the edges. So in order to animate that mask, select your layer, press M to open up your mask path, start the keyframes here, and then drag it back to the beginning where we want this masking effect to start. And I'm going to just simply drag it all the way so that this clip isn't visible. So if you play that back, you'll see the clip come in with that masking animation. Notice that it's a really hard edge there. If you would like that mask to be softer, select your layer, press F, that'll open up your mask feather. Increase it to however much you would like. I just want it to be a little softer, so let's make it about that. And now you have a little masking transition there. And again, we have this black area, so I'm going to snap to the end of my second layer, press N to move the end of my work area to the playhead, and then trim comp to work area. Lastly, I want to go over a couple effects you might find useful. There's CC Force Motion Blur. This effect, you can simply put it in an adjustment layer over your footage, and for any motion you create with your keyframing, it will add motion blur to that. Another useful effect you may want to use, so remember how our drone shot was not shot at a high frame rate, so we couldn't really slow it down that much. Another technique you can use to slow down your footage, so let's drag a blank layer down here. This is just that same drone clip. Let's say we wanted to slow this down to half speed, but it was shot at 30 frames per second, so we can't truly do that. A workaround you can do is go to Effects and Presets, search for time warp, drag that onto your clip. By default, it goes to half speed. After Effects will actually calculate in between frames and create new frames for your footage to actually play at half speed. This is a really useful workaround if you want to get slow motion out of low frame rate footage. Another useful effect is directional blur. If you'd like to add some directional blur to your footage, that's another common one. You can change the angle up here in Effect Controls and then change the blur length here. And lastly, you can stabilize any of your footage by using Warp Stabilizer. This works the same way as it does in Premiere. Simply drag and drop it onto your clip, and then it will analyze it and stabilize it. I'm going to delete these extra layers I just created, and let's say we want to export this composition I just created. First of all, let's actually save the file by pressing Control S and save it wherever you would like. I'm going to name this After Effects Basics. Then I'm going to select File, Export, Add to Adobe Media Encoder Q. I always render out my After Effects projects in Media Encoder. You can also do it within the software, but it's a little more clunky in my opinion, so I would suggest using Media Encoder. It gives you the same options for formats and presets as you would get in Premiere. So I'm going to do H.264, YouTube 4K. You can change the name of your output file here. I'm going to name it After Effects Basics Demo. You can navigate to wherever you want it to be and select save. Press this play button to start the queue, and then you are rendering out your file. And those are the basics of After Effects, guys. I really tried to squeeze as much information as possible into this little basics tutorial. I believe I've got plenty of info in there for you guys to get started using the software. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, or feel free to reach out via Instagram DM at Drew Kocak. I always reply to my DMs, so if you need any help getting started, just let me know and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And quick announcement, I'm super excited about this. My After Effects Masterclass starts on November 15th. Signups close November 11th though, so there's still a couple days if you are interested in joining. All the info can be found on my course site, thecreatoruniversity.com. This After Effects Masterclass is a hybrid online course and mentorship program. It's a 4-week program where I will be teaching you directly, and there are daily office hours where you can literally ask me anything you want to learn about After Effects. The actual online course portion is very in-depth. There's text walkthroughs, video walkthroughs, but the really awesome part about the class is that you'll you'll have direct access to me to actually screen share with you and teach you how to use the software one-on-one. But instead of just talking about it, let me just show you. In the description below, I've included a free module from the course. It's one of the lessons directly copy and pasted from the masterclass. It'll teach you how to do this 3D track particle effect. The course picks up right where this tutorial left off. So check out that free module. If it seems like it's for you, please reach out by the 11th. And if you're seeing this after signups close, feel free to just reach out on Instagram because I do plan on holding more masterclasses in the future. Anyways, that's it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Y'all nigga back to the bluff. Tryna get back to the bus. If I do not make a few million and shit, I might just go back to the hustle. I got me some product and I ain't gon' hide it. I might just start trapping in public. I might go to prison.